All right, so the 49ers are getting to work on filling that defensive coordinator position. This is a new situation for them. Past three seasons, their years had gone on quite some time into the offseason, of course, with the deep playoff runs. And so they've been kind of behind it whenever they've had to fill coordinator positions or coaching vacancies. But now that their season was over after 17 games of the regular season, and the decision was made, as I reported on Tuesday night, that Kyle Shanahan determined that Nick Sorensen would not be back as a defensive coordinator. The end of the press conference, end of the year press conference was on Wednesday. And then on Thursday, the 49ers announced that both Robert Saleh and Deshea Townsend have interviewed for that 49ers vacant defensive coordinator position. So what does that mean? A process that generally takes a little bit of time to get going just because of what the NFL mandates. Now, the 49ers can hire a defensive coordinator at any minute because they've already fulfilled the requirement that teams must interview two external candidates of minority candidates from outside the building. And so the 49ers did that with Robert Saleh and with Deshea Townsend. Now, Saleh is somebody that clearly is a front runner for that position. However, there is also the possibility that he could be in line for a couple of the head coaching jobs out there. Um, is it possible for the Jacksonville Jaguars to go in that direction? They've requested to talk to him. Of course, they don't have to request permission from anybody because Robert Saleh is a free agent, having been fired by the Jets after 5 games this season. But the Jaguars are reportedly planning to interview him. The Las Vegas Raiders are planning to interview him. And so there is a possibility that he could be in line for a head coaching job. I kind of doubt it because I would think when you look at his tenure with the Jets, their issues were on the offensive side of the ball. Robert Saleh comes to the table with very good credentials as a defensive coach, but as an offensive coach or as a head coach, never able really to find the offensive coordinator. Probably a bigger problem, never able to find the quarterback. And so when you look at where the Jaguars are with Trevor Lawrence set as the team's quarterback, would the Jags go for a defensive minded head coach? I suppose they would. I guess anything is possible with that organization. But I would think that with them, they would definitely want to get a coach that's maybe not like the culture guy that Saleh is, but somebody with a proven offensive system that he can bring to the table. Because then the most important hire really becomes who Saleh would get as the offensive coordinator. And I think the same can go with the Raiders because what the Raiders will have to do is identify a quarterback and an offensive philosophy. So I'm not ruling out that Salah could be strong head coaching candidates for those teams, but I wouldn't necessarily think that that's the way those teams are going. So therefore, he might be in a situation where he would want to be, or his next job will be as defensive coordinator. And of course, there's a background there. In 2017, Kyle Shanahan didn't know who his defensive coordinator was going to be. He just knew that he wanted Robert Saleh on his staff, and he hired him at sort of a nebulous position as a defensive assistant. And then they went after certain other guys with defensive backgrounds, defensive experience, Gus Bradley, Vic Fangio, to name two off the top of my head. But when all else failed, Shanahan decided to go with Salah as a defensive coordinator. That was the position Salah wanted all along. He thought that was the best fit for him. He thought that that would be the best thing for the 49ers. And it turned out it probably was. After a couple of rough years where people were calling for Robert Saleh's head and thought that Shanahan should fire him, Shanahan stuck with him. And of course, 2019 was the Super Bowl year where that defense turned into a dominant force. And then after the following year, 2020, is when Salah got the head coaching job. He was up for the job with the Browns the year before. I think the Jaguars were also talking to him at one point, but it was in for the 2021 season that Salah was hired by the Jets. Okay, now that is like pretty much the obvious choice for the 49ers, Robert Saleh. And if they can get him, I'm sure that that would probably be the hire. Um, Again, Salah will have to see what else is out there as far as defensive coordinator possibilities, but Salah is the obvious choice for the 49ers. And like I said, now that the 49ers have fulfilled the Rooney Rule obligations, they are free to hire anybody at any time to fill that job as defensive coordinator. And I certainly get the sense that Kyle Shanahan wants to move on this rather quickly. So this could happen soon, probably as soon as Salah kind of figures out what he wants to do. The other candidate that hasn't been mentioned yet, but that I've been talking about for quite some time, and that is Jeff Ulbrich. Ulbrich, of course, was the guy that Robert Saleh wanted to run his defense with the Jets. Ulbrich has Bay Area ties, South Bay ties, played for the 49ers for 10 seasons. He was always, from the moment that the 49er, from the moment that the Jets fired Saleh, Ulbrich was the guy where I thought if Sorensen is one and done as defensive coordinator, that Ulbrich was probably the most likely candidate because I think Ulbrich would, without any questions asked, come to the 49ers. So we'll see what happens there as far as Robert Saleh goes. But again, now things can happen rather quickly with the 49ers. Now, the other person in this mix is Deshea Townsend. He played in the NFL and he has most recently been, for this last season, the top defensive assistant under Aaron Glenn with the Detroit Lions. Yes, that's the Detroit Lions, the number one seed in the NFC. And so Townsend had been the defensive passing game specialist or coordinator, I should say, with the Lions. He held that same role with the Jaguars the previous two seasons. So Deshea Townsend comes in with some credentials of his own, but of course. He would be a first time coordinator, first time calling the defense. I don't think that that's the route the 49ers want to go down. I think they want somebody with experience. I think they want somebody that kind of holds those ideals of what the defense looks like coming from that Seattle tree. The 49ers, uh, Shanahan was kind of open-ended as far as what's going to happen schematically with wide nine. What do they want to do? I don't get the sense that the 49ers are going to move on from that, but they have to be very open-minded when it comes to considering all the possibilities for the defense. But, going to somebody who has the background that has worked for the 49ers, who has a pretty good idea of some, if not a lot, of the team's defensive personnel, and who can kind of chart the path for where the 49ers are going in the future. I think that's attractive to Kyle Shanahan as he looks to get that defense back to where it had been. So that's the update. Day one, really, the first full day after the end of season press conference, some news with Robert Saleh really being established as the top candidate right now for the defensive coordinator position. Deshea Townsend also interviewing. There's some other names out there floating around. Gus Bradley is someone who Shanahan looked for in that first year of 2017. He's a free agent after being fired by the Colts. So the takeaway here on Thursday is two virtual interviews were done, not in person, but they do fulfill that requirement for the Rooney Rule. So who knows? This thing could happen sooner than later, but I would assume it wouldn't happen until Salah has a good idea what's going on with any of the head coaching vacancies, most notably with the Jaguars and the Raiders. Thanks for watching this video. Any comments or questions, please leave them below. And that is it for now.